Hello everyone, it's Carl from Kentico. I'm really happy to welcome you to our next partner webinar. This time devoted to the Kentico CMS UI controls. At first I plan to cover all most used UI controls in a single presentation. However, as soon as I actually started to work on agenda and starting preparing materials for today's webinar, I realized that some of our UI controls are so complex and powerful that it would definitely deserve to talk about it in more details. So in the end, instead of briefly discussing UI controls in a single session, I decided to divide it into two or eventually three series, and we will start with the first control today. And this control is, as you can see, the UniGrid. So today's webinar will be first in series focused on Kentico UI controls. In this series, we are going to talk about Kentico UI controls providing functionality of standard Kentico interface. These controls are based on standard .NET controls, however, usually provide higher level of versatility, customization, and most important, they enhance feature set of standard .NET controls. The group of controls we're going to cover is called UniControls. We at Kentico, we call it UniControls because these controls were designed and implemented in such way so they can handle different sources of data, and they apply logic independently on the nature of the data. So it means that as long as you provide data in the form UniControl expects and you initialize the control in the right way, the result will be same for data coming either from within Kentico CMS or from some external source. Today I will present you details on UI control that I personally feel have the biggest potential to become heavily used for your project, and this control is UniGrid, as I already mentioned. So first, here's the agenda. So first we will take a brief overview of what actually UniGrid is. I'm not sure whether all of you have got in touch with the UniGrid, so I will show you what the UniGrid is. Then we will take a look on the hierarchy and the design of the UniControl. We will then talk about the XML definition for the UniGrid, because the XML definition is probably the most important part of the whole initialization process of UniGrid. As you will see, the XML definition in its current version is not, and obviously the UniGrid as a whole is not documented yet. So I feel like we should definitely cover all different elements allowed in the XML definition, attributes that you can use, and the way how those attributes influence the UniGrid behavior. As we will go through the XML definition, I will show you examples on particular attributes, so you can see how it works and what will be the result when you use some of them. Then we will take a look on properties of the UniGrid control, UniGrid user control, and we will talk about the actions that UniGrid fires and that you can react to these actions with your custom code, and you can perform custom actions as response to the actions. And at the end, we will hopefully have time for your questions and answer as usually. Again, if you will have any problem hearing me or that there will be a problem with the screen refreshing, just let me know over the chat, and so we can figure it out on the fly. So I guess we have a lot of things to cover today, so we can start with the overview. This overview basically displays at the bottom picture of the UniGrid control. The UniGrid is the control displaying the list of the, in this case, of the documents. The UniGrid is not just the list over there, but it also has the related filters at the top. But we will cover filters later on. So, as I already mentioned, the UniGrid is a user control that can be used to display data in a customizable and easily manageable table, or more precisely said, the grid. As you can see on the picture in front of you, it also supports many additional features such as paging, sorting for particular columns, filtering using custom or predefined filters, and selection allows multiple item selection using the selection boxes on the picture displayed at the very left. And in addition to that, it displays also action buttons that you can use to perform some actions. In Kentico, we use the UniGrid for displaying various kinds of information. You have seen UniGrid for the list of users, roles. In a site manager, the list of sites it's displayed using UniGrid. Even log is displayed UniGrid. But also in CMS desk, the list view mode, the one that you can see on the picture, or the list of outdated documents, all of those are displayed using the UniGrid. If we take a look on the hierarchy of the UniGrid, the schema at the bottom is very simple, but covers all the important parts of the UniGrid control. So you can imagine this schema to represent schema at the bottom to represent the UniGrid control. At the very core of the UniGrid, we use standard ASP.NET grid view control. The UniGrid control itself leverages grid view functionality. In such a way, you get more customization options along with possibility to react on several actions and events that take place in a grid view, as I mentioned recently. That way, you can easily implement interaction between user and your data listing. On top of the grid view, there is the grid XML definition mentioned earlier. So the XML definition is a physical XML file. It's a configuration file for the UniGrid that basically defines the structure and behavior of certain parts of the UniGrid. The XML scheme for the configuration file will be discussed in more details on the next slides. The data part, the data UniGrid displays may be supplied through the UniGrid data source property. You need to provide data for this property in form of data table or data set. If you use the data source property for populating the data. Other option on how to supply data is to specify the query name in the XML definition file. That will, and this query will be used then to retrieve data from database. Recently, we have added another option that allows you to specify the class name or object type to be displayed, and the UniGrid automatically retrieves data using the information from the class name for you. So you just don't need to care about retrieving the data from database manually or using the query. Instead, you specify the class name that UniGrid should display, and the class name retrieve information on the data class for you, and use this information to get the data from database. Another part I've included within the schema is the filter part. As I mentioned, you can plug in custom filter to the UniGrid, or you can use the default ones. So the filter can be used to filter out data user isn't interested in. Filter is basically the custom filter. Is basically just another user control that you develop similar way as a web part. You just inherit from different base class. In this case, it's a CMS abstract basic filter class that you inherit and implement virtual methods, and then when you plug it in to the UniGrid knows how to communicate with the filter and knows how to filter the data using the information from the filter. And the filter basically just passes some additional statement for the UniGrid where condition before data are loaded by the UniGrid. Then at the very top there are several actions that you can register for and you can handle and include your custom code in the event handlers. Those actions are event on action, on external data bound, on before data reload, and on after data reload. These events UniGrid fires on as lifecycle of inner grid view control goes. So you handle those events in case you want to perform additional action. Action is fired from within the grid view, and again we will take a closer look on these events in a while, as I'm going to show you an examples of elements used in XML definition. I will also use some of those events to accomplish the examples. So this is the hierarchy, and now we can move forward to the XML definition. What you can see here is the basic structure of the XML file that you will more or less follow when you're going to create your XML definition for your custom control using the UniGrid. It's not necessary always include all those sections within your XML definition file. You can, if you're not going to use the query for retrieving the data, you won't obviously need to include the query section. Or if you're not going to modify the default behavior of pager, you don't need to include the pager section. However, these are all available for you, so you can manipulate the UniGrid behavior through this section. The first section is action section. This element is used to define a column that contains various possible actions like edit, delete, view, and so on, represented by icons. Icons are actually the image buttons, and they are displayed for every row of the UniGrid. Individual action are defined by the child action elements. The next section is columns section. The columns section allows you to represent the main section of the UniGrid. The columns element itself has no attributes that you can use because each child column element have its own settings, and those settings are applied individual for every column. As I mentioned, you can specify the data class or object type that will be used to retrieve information from the database. So the object type element can be used to define this data class. A list of all data classes that you can use are available for you through the CMS class database table. So if you want to know what is the exact class name of some particular object like role or CSS style sheet or whatever, you just take a look in the CMS class database table. If this object type element is not used, a data source must be retrieved by means of query element, or you need to assign it through the data source property. Otherwise, the UniGrid won't display the data. And if you go for data source or query element instead of object type, you need to populate this information before the reload data method of the UniGrid is called. So after the object data type, we have a query element. As I mentioned, the query section can be used to specify the custom query that will be used by UniGrid to retrieve the data. Then there is a pager section. The pager section allows you to modify the default behavior of built-in pager. UniGrid built-in pager. And the last section is section options, and this element is used to define additional setting and special features of the UniGrid control. You specify the options using the child key elements, and we will cover the particular elements, the specific elements for every section right now. So let's start with the first element. This element is the actions element. The actions element accept three attributes: the parameters attributes, show header attribute, and width attributes. I guess the show header and width is self-explaining, so we can focus on parameters. The parameters attribute defines a list of columns that are available from the data source that are used as parameters in the on-click attribute of child action elements. Those, if you want to supply multiple parameters, you separate it by semicolons. So if I can show you an example of this, I'm going to use user list page. So the page that displays the list of user in Site Manager administration users. This page is located within CMS Site Manager users, and there is the page user list ASPX. Before we start looking at the XML schema, I just want to quickly show you how the UniGrid is placed on this page. So there is an ASPX page that contains register directive at the top for the UniGrid, and then the UniGrid is placed as a control in the ASPX page. The important part is the grid name that specify the path to the physical XML definition. We will talk about UniGrid-Properties at the end, so you should be fine right now with this explanation. And then there are explicitly specified columns that are retrieved from the data source and used for binding the data. So that's the ASPX part of the page. In the code behind, for now, I just want to show you that in the page load of this page, we register the onAction event and we register the onExternal data bound event. In addition to that, we register also onBefore the data reload event. Alright, so let's take a look on the XML definition file for this user list. So this is this sample. You can see the action section at the top, and in here there is parameters attribute specified, where the user ID is specified as the only one parameter. And as you can see, there are several actions defined. We will take a look on purpose of those attributes, but I want to show that one of the action has on-click event defined. So when the client clicks on the image button, on the manage roles button, this one, the custom manage roles function is executed, and JavaScript function executed, and we pass the first parameter on with the index 0 from the collection of parameters specified in here. So we pass the user ID of the user in a row that where the action button was clicked. So that's the way how the parameters can be passed to the on-click attribute. So as I said, now we will take a look on action elements. So the child elements of actions section, and the attributes for the actions element are as following. There is a caption attribute. You can assign the localization string for the action caption, and this will be displayed as a tooltip for this action button. So in case of users, if I go on the manage roles image button, I can see the tooltip that is specified in here. So that's the way how you use the caption. Then there is a command argument attribute. The name of the column whose value should be passed as the action argument parameter of the on-action event handler is specified in here. So you can specify a column name, and whenever the button is clicked, so the grid view fires on-action event, the value of this field for the particular row, particular column, is passed as an action argument. So in the on-action, you can use the value to identify the user, for example, and so on. Then there is an external source name attribute. This is the name of the, in case of actions, it's a name of the action that is passed as the source name parameter of the on-external data-bound event handler. So the value that you specify in external source name when the on-external data-bound event is fired in the grid view, you can switch your code based on what is the name of a source, so what is the value of source name parameter, and that way you can identify which action is being bound to the grid. Then there is a name attribute. This is similar to external source name, but the name attribute is used by on-action event handler, and is passed to the on-action event handler as an action name parameter. The last one that I would like to mention is the on-click, and as I said, it allows you to define JavaScript on-click function for the given action. It uses the columns defined in the parameters, as you've seen, and you can access these parameters using the macros. So curly bracket with the index of the parameter in the list of parameters passed in parameters attribute. All right, so we can move to the columns section. Here I will show you some examples, and we'll cover the most of the attributes, as the columns column section, and the column element is crucial for the UniGrid functionality, and it basically defines what columns will be displayed in the UniGrid and what data will be outputted for particular cells. So the first attribute is the allow sorting. This obviously indicates whether the column can be used to sort the rows of the UniGrid. Then we have an external source name attribute. The external source name, again, as a previous case, is the name of the column passed as the source name parameter for the on-external data-bound event handler. It's used for implementing custom functionality in the cells of the given column. I will show you how to do that. Another interesting attribute is href. If the URL is entered here, a link to this URL is generated around the content of the cells in this column. You can use the macros, curly bracket, and index of the parameter in the parameters attribute defined for the specific column. So you're not using the parameters collection from the actions section, but instead every column has its own parameters attribute that you can use to specify different columns that then can be accessed through the href attribute. The parameters. You can see there is that parameters attribute I was talking about. Then we have a source attribute. This attribute is used to supply the name of the column from the data source of the UniGrid that is used as the source for the content of this column. So you can either specify single column from the data source that will provide data for the particular cell, or in addition to that you can use the special macro hash key all and double hash at the end, and in that case the whole row will be passed to the on external data bound event handler, so you can access whatever column you need. And the last one that I would like to mention is the sort attribute. This attribute is used to define the column name that will be used for sorting. In case that the all macro is used in the source attribute. So by default the sorting is using the source value. However, if you use the all macro for the source, you explicitly specify the column that will be used for sorting in the sort attribute. So let's take a look on some example. First, I can show you the allow sorting, how the allow sorting works. So by default, allow sorting is enabled for every column. So you can see that I can sort users according username, according full name. I can sort according email and basically all the fields. So if I want to explicitly specify that I don't want to allow sorting for the username, I just specified allow sorting as a false, and now when I refresh the grid, you can see that I click on the header, I'm not able to sort. So by default, fields allow sorting, so you use allow sorting if you want to force disabling of the sorting functionality. And now let's take a look on how the external source name can be used and how to handle the on external data bound event. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new column here. I will specify the source as all, Okay, and I just need to update the external source name. Let's call it test Carol J. Okay, so now when I refresh the users list, you can see a new field is added here. Right now, as I pass the whole row to the external data bound even, you can see that some string representation of object data type is outputted. So that's obviously not what I need. So I will handle the cell text in the code behind of the page. I go to on external data bound even handler, and in here you can see that I've got the sender, that is object that the data are currently binded for, the source name, it's the external source name value specified in the XML grid, and the parameter is the value of the column, so in this case the whole data row view. So I'm going to add a new statement within the switch like this. As I know that this is a data row view, I will just cast the parameter as a data row view. Okay. And now I can show you how to output, let's say, drop-down list into the cell. So I could just access some value of the column in the row. However, I will make it more complex, and I will show you how to output the drop-down list instead of plain text. So I'm going to create a new panel here. Okay, I will also create a new drop-down list. I will populate its items from what I get in the row. So row U, let's say user ID, and row view, row username. Okay. Now I will just add this drop-down list into controls collection for the panel, and I will return the panel object. In case that for some reason the data row view would be a null, I will just return what was passed to the on external data bound as a parameter. So now when I refresh the user list, you can see that instead of text I can see drop-down list. I just mixed the value and the text of the drop-down list items. So instead of username you can see user ID, but you get an idea here. So in the very similar way, you could include even more complex controls. You can load, you can dynamically load your custom control. You can include it within the list. You don't need to only process the string information passed to the on external data bound. All right, so let's revert the changes here, and that was one example I wanted to show you. The other example is how the href works and passing those parameters specified for the column. So I'm going to specify the parameters like user ID and username, and then I can specify the href like relative path to the home ASPX and passing user ID and passing username using macros and parameters. So if I refresh the grid definition now, you can see that the content of the username cell is displayed as a link, and if you take a look on the link, you will see that macros are dynamically replaced by the actual value of the current row. Okay, I guess the other fields and usage of other fields should be pretty straightforward. So let's move forward to column child elements. You can define custom tooltip for columns, and you can define custom filters for columns. The tooltip takes the external source name again, so you can handle it on external data bound event. You can that way you can include some controls in the tooltip, and the tooltip is displayed when you hover over the content of the column of the cell. The filter is enabled for specific column. You need to specify the source column used in default where condition, because the default filters generate a where condition and pass it to the UniGrid, and by the source you define what is the column name for this filter, and then you specify the type of the filter, of the default filter that should be displayed. The type can be text, checkbox, integer, or double, and I'm going to show you how to include the custom filter for some column. So let's say I want to filter based on the username, so I just specify the source to be username and type to be text. This, and now when I I need to force UniGrid to display the filters. So I'm going to use display filter key for the options section, and I just set it to true. And now let me see. True. Okay, I'm just missing some information. Okay. Filters. Okay, I'm not sure whether I missed. Oh, I see. Sorry for that. Of course, it should be like this. Okay, so I enabled the filter, and now I can filter out using the default filter. So in addition, you can specify your custom filter. You use the path property of the filter attribute, and you just include the file name of your custom CMS abstract-based filter control, and the UniGrid will take the where condition part from the filter before the data are loaded by the UniGrid. Right, so let's take a look on the next sections. As I mentioned, there is an object type session. You specify only columns, so the columns that should be retrieved separated by commas. If empty, all columns will be retrieved by default. And then you specify the object name attribute, and this takes the class name of the used data class, and the class name format is prefix dot and the object name. As I said, you can take a look within the database for information on class names for system objects. Instead of object type and data source, you can use the query, as already mentioned. You specify the columns and the name. In this case, the name is the full code name of the system query that should be executed. The name of this query should be in format class name dot query name. So CMS site dot select side list or something like that. The query element takes also or allows also child elements, and those are name, type, and value. The name for the parameter child element is defines the name of parameter used within the SQL query. The type defines what type of the parameter it is, and the value, you supply the value that will be replaced for the parameter in the query. It is useful when you have a query that you want to reuse, for the UniGrid, but you don't want to create a new query. Instead, you just hard code the value for the parameter, so the query gets executed without problems, and that way you can reuse it. The last part of the XML definition schema is the pager. Not the last, almost the last is the pager. The pager allows you to alter the behavior of the default UniGrid pager. You can use default page size attribute to alter the default amount of rows displayed on one UniGrid page. The default page size should be one of the options defined in the page size options. The page size options allows you to define the size of pages. You can even use the all macro again to include the all option within the drop-down list to display all items at once. You can disable showing the page size drop-down list using the show page size attribute, and you can also define the maximum number of pages displayed in the navigation, group those pages, and you can display the drop-down list for displaying the groups of pages. So let's take a look how it works. So if I go to XML definition, I will include the pager section here. Okay, and I'm going to define a new key default page size. Let's set it to be 10. And let's define a new page size options to be 10, 20, 40, and all. Okay, so now when I refresh the grid, you can see that I've got only 10 items displayed, and my page size drop-down is displays items specified in a grid. In a grid definition, I can actually use the visible pages visible pages attribute to say free. And now when you take a look at the bottom of the grid, you can see that I've got only 3 pages displayed by default, and I can move either through the pages like this, or I can use the drop-down list to access the particular page directly. So that's the pager. Okay, and as I mentioned, there are some additional options you can use. So let's take a look on that, and you can use the display filter key to indicate whether a filter should be displayed about the UniGrid. If the amount of displayed rows is lower than the value of the filter limit key, the filter will be hidden despite the value of these settings. So the next key is filter limit that you can use to specify the value that will enable the displaying the filter. If this value is not supplied, the value from a web config file from CMS default listing filter limit key is used instead. The show selection allows you to display the selection boxes on the very left. We will take a look on how to use that. You can specify the selection column, that is the name of the column used as an item in the array of selected rows, which can be then accessed through the selected items property of the UniGrid. By default, the first column of data source is used for the selection column. And the last one is the show sort direction, and that's in charge of controlling whether the little icon is displayed next to the column header text when the sorting is applied for particular column. So what I want to do now is I want to show the selection for this user's grid. Show selection, and I'm going to define the selection column to be user ID. Okay, and now when I refresh the UniGrid, you can see the checkboxes are displayed for me, so I can check several items in there. And when I add a simple button here, and I register for the submit event for this button, I can then check whether grid element has selected items specified. and I can eventually perform some action with those items. So let's say that user, for every user ID, let's create some stream builder object that we will use to populate the user ID, let's say like this, and then in the end we will just use the script helper and we will register the startup script like this. Just right. So if I refresh the user grid now and I select some users, when I hit the submit button, you can see that those items were accessed through the selected items property, and that way you can eventually perform mass actions on items. That's actually the way how, if you take, for example, the list view mode for in a CMS desk, those mass actions at the bottom are implemented using the selected items property from the UniGrid. All right, so we are getting quite short on time. So let's quickly take a look on UniGrid-Properties. The UniGrid exposes several properties. I haven't listed all of them in here. Instead, I have I have mentioned the ones that I feel are important for you to know. So there is a columns property. Again, it's this same story. You specify the columns that are loaded from the data source in this columns property. The data source is the property that can be alternatively used for supplying the data table or data set object that should be used by UniGrid to bind the data. There is a delayed reload property. This one was implemented for you to so you will be able to postpone the loading of data by UniGrid to some later event than loading of the page where the UniGrid is placed. If you use the delayed reload property, you then need to manually call the reload data method of the UniGrid in order to force the UniGrid to reload the recently populated data. It can be useful in case that you need to perform or retrieve some additional data on the page load, and after that when you, let's say, supply or modify the where condition, after that you will reload the data manually. So that's the delayed reload. Then there is a filter directory path property. This needs to be initialized when you're going to use your custom filter, so the UniGrid knows where to search for the physical file. What is the base directory for the filters. Filter zero rows text is exactly the same, has the same purpose as the zero rows text of other controls, but it allows you to differentiate between when no data returned because of filtering or the no data exists by default in the database. The grid name is the property that you can use for specifying the path to the XML definition file. The grid view makes available the inner grid view control, so you can eventually manipulate the grid view control that is used as a base for UniGrid, and the selected items property, the one that we already demonstrated purpose for. The last slide is about the events. I've shown you the on-external data bound usage. Data bound is raised when UniGrid starts binding the data, event binding the data. So using the on-external data bound, you can incorporate your custom logic and that way influence the output return for the specific column as you've seen. The similar purpose has the on-action event. This event is fired whenever the button is clicked, whenever the image button is clicked in the UniGrid. If we take a look on definition of on-action method for the user list, you can see that, for example, if the edit button is clicked for particular user, we redirect you to some editing interface using the action argument that is actually the user ID in the query string. If you take a look in the XML, you can see that edit has external source name set up like edit, so that way you identify the action in the on-action event. Edit has name edit, so you identify action in on-action event, and by default the parameter passed as an action argument is the first item, first column in the set, so the user ID. And then the same way delete delete of the user or displaying the roles. The one thing that you might keep in mind is that you can influence whether the click on the image button will eventually make it to the postback to the server. You can define the on-click function here, and as long as your custom function will return false or true depending on some inner logic, you can influence whether the next statement in the on-click rendered for the image button, that is actually the postback, will be executed or not. So that's the case with the confirmation attribute, for example. That's attribute that allows you to display the confirmation dialog before the action is performed. So when you click cancel, the return false, the false is returned from the confirmation script, and therefore the postback is not processed. So yeah, and I forget to mention the on before data reload and on after data reload. Again, if you take a look on this page, user list page, for example, and what we are doing in on before data reload, that is event called before the grid UniGrid reloads its data. We actually set up the where condition for the grid element from the external filter. This external filter is for the users is pretty complex and has some advanced feature. So we rather included the where condition that way. So instead of using the path and the custom filter in the XML grid definition, you can use the on before data reload for specifying the where condition as well. The similar way on after data reload is the event raised after the data are loaded by the UniGrid. So that's all I prepared for today. I'm sorry for rushing it at the end. I just got lost in time. So anyway, we have time for your questions. Of course, the presentation and the recording of the video will be available on Partner Portal, so then you can download the presentation and goes through the attributes and try it for yourself. You will see that it's the really key to use UniGrid effectively is to know all the attributes, and as long as those were not documented yet properly, I guess the only way was to take a look on the UniGrid usage in our environment, and or to take a look on the UniGrid source code and try to figure out what attributes are supported by the XML schema definition. But now you should have quite complete list of attributes allowed for particular elements that you can follow. So if there are any questions, you can use the question box in your control panel, and I will try to answer them right away. So I will give you some time for posting your questions. Yeah, the first question is whether I have a Twitter. Yes, I have a Twitter. However, I haven't included it on the slide. I guess I just forget it. But anyway, I can post it. Okay, I can post it in the chat, but I just need to figure it out because I do not write it too often. So it should be like this, I believe. Yeah, this is it. So you have the Twitter in the chat window. Any other questions? Yeah, I would be really interested in to know how many of you have actually used the UniGrid for either your custom user interface or even maybe on the live site. I would set up the polls, but haven't tried yet. So if you have used the UniGrid and if you've got stuck with any functionality, or if you have had some outstanding issues that were not resolved, or you just gave up on that, maybe you can drop me an email and we can discuss it. We are documenting all the UI controls for upcoming, not upcoming version, but for version 6.0. So you will have even more information in the documentation, and you will have also examples on how to work with not only UniGrid but also with other controls that we're going to talk about in next series of the UR controls. The next, I would like to talk about the the presentation applies to 5.5, but the UniGrid control so far hasn't been changed for the 6.0. So the information that you got today will apply for 6.0. Maybe there will be some improvement, but definitely the information will apply for the 6.0 as well. Yeah, in the next partner webinar, I would like to talk about UniSelector, because it's also a very powerful tool, powerful control that allows you to display the standard selection boxes like you used to with users when you are assigning a user to roles or roles to the user. So we will take a look on UniSelector then. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you for finding the time to attend this webinar, and as soon as I get it converted and upload it to the website, you will be notified and you will be able to download both presentations and recording. So I would like to thank you for your time once again, and hopefully talk to you next time.